Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. This is the Matthew Dark Show. Now remember, hit subscribe everywhere you get your shows. Never miss an episode. A very good one. I want to bring us back here just a few years ago. It was August of 2021, the disastrous U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now you got to go back the first 25 years and say, well, how did we end up 22 years, 20 years? How did we end up in Afghanistan in the first place? Well, they told us that a guy in a cave in Afghanistan took out 3 buildings in New York City with 2 planes, and that led to invasions in Iraq and Afghanistan. And during that process, we absolutely had to have partners in the region as we're sending American boots to foreign land to fight this war on terrorism. And those people all began to pick sides. Are you going to side with the U.S. soldier, the U.S. movement? Are you going to be a Taliban victim? I mean, this was a serious environment when the U.S. launched itself in here. This is a very unique perspective, though, of what happened on the ground with those allies. Shawn VanDiver is joining us. Now, the group is Afghan Evac, and what they're doing is these are closely allied Afghan partners in the region, Shawn, that you basically relied on during your time there and that our soldiers were going to be relying on during our time there. I want to thank you for joining us. Go in and kind of give us sort of the background around this and really what it looks like today. But please, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on today. Really grateful to be here. And look, everybody remembers the pictures of Afghans hanging off the planes as we were leaving after our 20-year war in Afghanistan back in August of 2021. But let's back up a little bit. How did we 21? But let's back up a little bit. How did we get there, right? You talked a lot about like why we went in. For 20 years, American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, any facet of our military served in Afghanistan. And diplomats, the intelligence community, aid workers, journalists, lawyers and prosecutors who put the Taliban away, parliamentarians, all of these people that make a democracy thrive and work, were stuck there, right? And we didn't follow through on our end of the bargain, right? We lost that war.
Right.
President Trump in his first administration negotiated with the Taliban. I brought him to Camp David. They worked out a deal where the U.S. would withdraw. Unfortunately, they didn't really include the former Afghan government in that. And whereas in Ukraine, we saw Zelensky stand and fight, and the war that was supposed to last 3 days is still ongoing today. In Afghanistan, as the Taliban started coming through, after there were 5,000 Taliban prisoners that were released, they were rejuvenated, ready to fight. The whole force descended upon Afghanistan in early 2021, was making, or I'm sorry, in summer of 2021, was making their way through really quickly. And we saw Kabul fall really quickly. Intelligence reports suggested it would last 6 months. That was obviously wrong. President Ghani fled with bags of money and left the country to fend for itself. The military didn't have leadership. And what we saw was 20 years of work. Veterans like me, I didn't serve in Afghanistan. I served in Iraq and elsewhere. But my generation of veterans served in our longest wars, and we saw all of that work that we had done. I remember when this happened in Iraq, and it felt like, what the hell was it all for?
Yeah.
August 2021, there's a mad rush on the airport. There's flights that are coming out. The U.S. government didn't have a real plan. They say they did, but we have eyeballs.
Yeah.
And look, thousands of people got phone calls. In my case, I got a phone call from my buddy Lucky. Lucky said, brother, I was sitting right here. Said, brother, I'm atop this mountain in Urgun, 8 hours outside of Kabul. I think I'm going to die. The Taliban have us surrounded. We're running out of ammunition. Will you grant my last wish and help get my family back to San Diego? And thousands of people across the country got similar calls. And we did what we could. We got dropped into all these chats. And Afghan Evac began because I saw 40 chats that weren't talking to each other, and I said, yo, we need to talk to each other. We need to get together. So I started 2 daily sync calls, gave people 15 seconds to talk about what had happened in the last 12 hours, 15 seconds on what was coming up, and 15 seconds on what they need. And through that, the Afghan Evac Coalition was born. Afghan Evac was born. Lucky made it out. He stole a jingle truck talked his way through 10 Taliban checkpoints. We got him to the air, or we got him to Eagle Base, which was the secret base there. Got him on a black helicopter, got him to that airport, and got out with his 2 babies and his wife.
I mean, so I think you just made a really important point in why this has to be an effort that's sustained. We spent 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan trying to defeat terrorism, Al Qaeda, Taliban, all these things, only to literally evacuate and turn it all right back over to those that we were trying to defeat or deemed that were not qualified to do it. I mean, that is a tragedy. If we lost a single life in Afghanistan, it is a tragedy. Had no business there, and then an epic, and I mean colossal failure. So we have to address those issues. The reliance, though, on the culture. I just talking about Afghanistan a little bit, and what I've heard about Afghanistan is that is a more nomadic. It is not like a in the hearts of all its citizens, I will fight for this country. It has this lineage of history. I guess setting up, how did it look as you're going in? I mean, were these people like so like this is our country and stay out? I mean, how was the atmosphere for a lot of those soldiers interworking with the natives?
Sure. So look, what I've heard, because I didn't serve there, but what I've observed from my interactions with Afghans and what I've heard about folks that were first in is Afghans were welcoming to Americans and wanted our help because they didn't want to live under the Taliban regime. And now, surely there are folks who do, but the folks who stood with us all across the country for 20 years, people, we would go into tire shops, for example, and say, "Oh, you have good English. Like, why don't you come? Why don't you come work for us?" And people got acclimated to American culture, and look, they want the same things that we want, right? And most importantly is we made a promise. We made a promise to people starting 20 years before and all the way through the end. We made a promise that if they stood with us, we'd stand with them. And an American promise in the name of our country has to mean something. And it can't just mean something depending on who's behind the Resolute desk, right? It has to mean something always. And so veterans across this country are really upset. We were upset when the Taliban got invited to Camp David. We were upset when President Biden botched the withdrawal. And we've been upset now that, now that President Trump has shut this all down. Just last night, I was on the phone with a bunch of Afghans who are stuck on an American base right now, just in limbo. And look, the truth is that we had on January 20th at 12 p.m. when President Trump took over, we had 5,000 Afghans leaving a month on 28 flights a month leaving Kabul, going to third country places. They were fully vetted before they left Kabul, fully vetted again before they left this third country. And that's because I'm actually wearing a shirt about it. Enduring Welcome was the safest, most secure legal immigration pathway in our country's entire history. And it represents the very first time that our country was keeping its word to wartime allies. And the reason that it exists is because myself and other veterans went to the president, went to the White House and said, "Hell no, you can't just leave these people behind." And to their credit, there were people all throughout government that believed in the same thing. That's why we had the information we needed. That's why we were able to get in the rooms we were in. That's why this groundswell of Americans from every part of the American experience, right? Left, right, and center, red, purple, blue, yellow, whatever you want to call it, stood up and said, "We have to get this right." And to President Biden's credit, he was doing it. Now, it took a long time to get them there. For example, in February 2022, we got an exception for the family of active duty U.S. military to be able to come here as refugees. President Biden's DOD took 19 months to get policy around it before anybody could come here. So that's November 2023. And unfortunately, come January 2025, no more of those folks were able to leave. In fact, there's 3,000 of them that are stranded.
And these are people that if they were just living in Afghanistan, they will be hunted down and killed for assisting this effort. I mean, they are an enemy to the terrorists that run that country. But why do you think it is that they decided to turn themselves on these allies? I mean, we let every scumbag around the world waltz over here for 4 years, 20 million of them. 80% are undesirable, meaning 80% of the people that came in under Joe Biden, you would never let watch your children. I know that for a fact. That's just the nature of human beings. But why do you think they decided to pick on those that were assisting and let the stranger rapist, pillager come in without filter? What was the agenda?
Look, I want to be clear. They were helping these folks. We had 5,000 a month coming in, right? We got 200,000 Afghans in under President Biden.
Right.
Now some of them came over the southern border in the way that you're talking about here.
Right.
And look, now ICE is hunting down those Afghans. And
they were welcomed in at one point, you're saying, under Joe Biden. Now we're coming in.
Yeah, they were welcomed in, sort of, right? They were welcomed in the way that anybody is welcomed in, with a notice to appear, being told you're putting under removal orders, but you can come in temporarily.
Right.
And it was not, we didn't encourage that because we wanted durable pathways for people.
These people should have had set, defined, you're coming in under this legally protected and it's for good. There's no messing with this once you're in the US. I mean, that was your intent.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That was what should have happened, right? But there's multiple pathways, right? There's the SIV pathway, which is all jacked up because the onus is on the Afghan to keep their paperwork. The US government didn't keep any records. So they have to go and get it's this whole convoluted process that works really well, but it just takes forever. And then the actual good path is the refugee path. The refugee path is great. Yeah, here you go. The refugee path is good because you have to be referred into it by a U.S. person. And both work. They're just both slow. And what should exist is a wartime allies program that when you start your relationship with the government, you fill out something like an I-9, your vetting starts. When the risk moment happens, you hit the button, you can get on a flight within a week, and then you're there experiencing safety.
Yeah, I mean, this should be really disturbing to, I mean, here we are, the rich, wealthy, imperialistic United States going into, I mean, I don't know how Afghanistan ranks in the poverty level. She's a bottom 10% of the world. There's no doubt about that. Just to think about, though, as an American, because there's this huge movement to say, I stand with this war and I stand with that war. And it's like, I don't know that our citizens have a clue with what they're standing for. When we go over and do things like this to other countries, I mean, you have to ask yourself, now, what were we doing there in the first place? What good did come out of it? Are our soldiers better? Are we safer? Is Afghanistan more prosperous? None of that is true. None of that is the case. As we stand with Israel, as we stand with Ukraine, as we send more blood into the streets, it's just completely out of bounds. And it's this addiction, and you see it from all administrations, to just be involved in war and chaos. And I guess, what is that? Seeing it from your perspective, a military veteran's perspective, what on earth is this appetite to always have our men subjected to chaos around the world? Why?
Look, I think every administration has their reasons for going in and doing things. In this case, this happened. I was in the Navy. I joined the Navy in October 2020. Went to boot camp in February 2000. I'm sorry, in October 2000. Went to boot camp in February 2001, and life was pretty good. We didn't have any wars going on.
Right.
When 9/11 happened, Americans wanted blood, right? And we got involved in Afghanistan and Iraq based on 9/11. And look, the truth is that a lot of good did happen for Afghans over 20 years, right? There are women who are robotics experts, working to be astronauts. We did some good in Afghanistan. There was never a coherent plan and strategy, and it was always dictated by politics rather than a long-term vision guided by Afghans, right? And look, I got to say, not allowing the Afghan government into the negotiations for the withdrawal caused a lot of problems. Withdrawing all of our troops caused a lot of problems, right? We've got troops everywhere in Germany and elsewhere around the world. But look, I don't think it's not the military's job to question what's happening in politics. Now, we need to be informed by it.
Yeah.
It's the American people's job to elect people that they believe in, who aren't going to get us into unnecessary foreign entanglements.
That's right.
I don't know if Afghanistan was necessary or not. I think it could have been done a lot differently at any given moment. But as soon as we went in there and as soon as we started making promises, we owed it to those folks to follow through on the promises. An Afghan diplomat recently said to me that she remembers what it was like before the U.S. got there and the Taliban was in charge the first time. an entire generation of women was lost. She told me that's happening again, and it's because of the way that the U.S. left. And I can't disagree with that. It's really horrific what the United States government and the international community has allowed to persist in Afghanistan. And right now, President Trump is talking about a deal to take Bagram back. And look, what we're hearing is that the deal is pretty far along. But what I'm not hearing is that any of this is conditioned upon improvement for women and girls or the safety of our wartime allies. We have an everlasting debt to every single person that served alongside us, protected American lives, whether or not they met the letter of the law for the SIV program, which was meant to fail, or if they're just good enough to come here as a refugee.
Right.
We've got to follow through on both. And we've got to do it now because people are being hunted down. A U.S. service member's mother got her throat slit last year while waiting for this. And it's just unacceptable.
Yeah. I wonder how the average American would respond if they work 25 years and then find out, oh, your Social Security, we don't have that anymore. Your Medicare is all that's gone. It was a lie. We meant well, we just couldn't deliver. I mean, I think that is it's going to inspire more hate. So this is what I love about the U.S. We go over there with this fake intention of we're going to liberate and but you can't liberate cultures like that. You can't all of a sudden take something that entrenched in Afghanistan, go there for 20 years, cause chaos, death, harm, destruction, leave, and then just assume your goodwill will just permeate throughout the region. You either never go to those kind of places and you stay as far away from them as possible, or you stay there with the intention of we're going to actually reproduce American great values everywhere, which is impossible. So see, you can't really do the fix it all, but we're not going to stay there. And you really can't be meddling in places that you don't have the intention to see all the way through, which just shows to show you this imperialistic view of the world. It's pretty hard in this day and age. Even for the great United States, we spent $2 trillion, 20 years, and I would say, show me where we are thriving upon those efforts. I guess I'd say it like this. If we'd have took the $2 trillion and said, we're going after mental health, we're going after homelessness, we're going after the American ghetto to make these now up to standard, we're going to bring people up. Then I would say, well, that we can show we don't have poverty now because we spent that we have worse conditions. We have inflation because of that very war. We live under inflation. And so it's like, American people, wake up. And they're going to probably have that moment right now with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was a no war president, pulling out of all, he claims to have ended all these wars. Where is the peace? I see none of that, right? And so people are now in lifetime, real time. We voted for this guy, did this. And let me make sure I'm clear to everybody. Hillary Clinton was not an option for me. Joe Biden is not an option for me. And Kamala Harris is not an option for me. But that doesn't mean I won't hold the president of the United States accountable for what you said. I need the Epstein files. I need no new wars. And I need all that money. America only right now. And American promises, I guess you could include in there, but it has to affect American interests first and foremost. And once we start dipping out of America only interests right now, it's really hard to say, I feel your heart, because you're looking at suffering right in front of your face as you go 7,000 miles away to free some stranger. I'm conflicted, but I don't know. Your thoughts, go ahead. I think you're muted.
Thank you so much. Look, I think we probably disagree politically on a lot of things, but this one thing matters so much. And what I see is 90% of the American public support this. And what I would say is we've got the $2 trillion that we spent on this war. If we added 10 billion to it, which is nothing, right? That's nothing compared to this. If we added 10 billion, every single one of our allies could be out. We got 200,000 out. All we need is 265,000 more of people who stood with us, which is not that much. Don't let anybody tell you that it's that much, right? We have room in this country for people that stood with us.
Absolutely.
So what I would say is, the money was already spent. We have to fund, not only that, we have to fund what happens to our veterans when they get here. We should probably make everybody who served with us a veteran. And then the tax cuts that we've seen have affected only the most wealthy. So I think everybody needs to pay their fair share, especially at the top. Trickle down has not worked. We've seen inflation. We've seen all these things happen. And look, God damn it, we need housing. You can't build housing in California. We're short 2
Yes.
million units. We need to build it now. And if we taking a tax cut, if we asked everybody to spend an extra, $20 a month on taxes around this country, I don't know what the number is, but if we asked everybody to give just a little bit more, we could have mental health support. We could have housing. And you know whose fault the mental health stuff is? JFK, Ronald Reagan. Because they
Ending
didn't
those programs.
finish the job, right? If we had finished the job on both of those things, then we wouldn't have the mental health crisis that we have now. We wouldn't have the homelessness that we have now. But what we need to do is stop allowing people to weaponize our laws to prevent development from happening.
Yes.
Spend the money. It costs money to have nice things like clean roads and bridges and all of that, right? We've got to get out of this idea of eliminating all of our taxes. We can spend our money smarter.
Yes.
But if we're going to commit to something, we've got to see it all the way through, because eventually that bill comes due and it's going to cost exponentially more, right? If we had undergrounded this train that's in San Diego, or put a tunnel through the hills, it wouldn't be about to fall off the cliffs. It would, instead of costing $2 billion, it would cost $50 million, 20 years ago. So look, I agree with you that we have got to focus on some of our priorities, but sometimes I hear the same people who say they want to focus on America only talk about how important it is that we have a tax cut. And I think those things are incongruous, right? We've got to make an investment in our country.
Yes.
Now, the lower and middle class needs a tax cut, but the 1%, the 10%, a flat tax of 20% would be fine.
No. And this is not a tax issue, because our taxes are not the problem. The taxes are the facade that we actually run government on our taxes. That's the imaginary thing that keeps us in prison while they print the money that goes to Afghanistan and Ukraine. They are not collecting enough tax revenue to pay for the projects that they do. And we're suggesting that we're America only, and it's the people that you're describing, the lower and the middle, that basically the system right now, it's impossible. If you're a 20-something person in California right now, you are never going to own a home. And I don't want to sound like a jerk, but that's the reality. They don't pay $250,000 out of college for regular jobs, but that's what you need to buy a home in California. That's wrong. California is one of the most beautiful states it's one of the most beautiful places in the world that could literally be an independent country producing its own stuff and just operating. And laws and extreme wild liberal views have prevented the exact kind of building and the kind of efficiencies that you have to have in the market. So what I can tell everybody, we're not going to vote our way out of any of this stuff. It comes from the action, the organic action of the people. How do we choose to spend our money? So going to taxes, we should all, I don't care if you're white, black, rich, poor, pink, yellow, we should all be opposed to the amount of taxes that we're forced to endure. Property, sales, W-2 wages, we should all be opposed to that. That's number one. We should all be rigorously opposed to 30% on our credit cards. We should be saying, absolutely not, can't do that anymore. We're going to stop right now, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. We don't need 8, 9 streaming platforms. So as an American coalition, you want to better America? Get rid of Netflix, put it into a cause that moves your heart. You want to move the needle in America? Get rid of your Disney Plus. Take that $15 and put it into something that actually moves the needle in America. We have to use our money and put it into the places, not politicians, places that are going to organically produce better outcomes for the average American. This is not going to be get the right guy in office and they'll take it from there. That's not happening, folks. This was a great trap, and now it's going to be an organic movement away from it. And just so we're clear, as disappointed as we are with Donald Trump and this administration, and the disappointment is exploding daily, Kamala Harris was not a choice. And so you have to understand, folks, we are not dealing with cream of the crop. Your family is never going to be as important to those pigs as they are to you. When will you start treating it as an inside job? I mean, that's just a common plea to the American. None of these people have our best interest in mind, not like we do.
Yeah, look, I think that I don't know how any American could not be or couldn't be happy with. I don't know how any American could be happy with politics right now.
Right.
Republicans and Democrats aren't delivering for anybody.
Right.
And I think people are very upset with the status quo. I think President Trump got elected because people are upset with the status quo. Yep. And I just, but then you look at things like Prop 50 in California and these elections that just happened. People are pissed off. People are not happy with anybody, and why would you be, right? You cited the Epstein files. I mean, what the heck happened there, right? And what people want is the ability to trust the person that they're voting for to do the right thing, right? And sometimes the right thing isn't going to all it's never you're never going to elect somebody that you agree with 100% of the time, which is fine, right? That's life. That's how life works. But you've got to be able to explain your guiding principles. You've got to be able to talk about what matters to you. And look, I think that people from every party, every part of the American experience can agree that if an American makes a promise, that promise needs to be taken to the bank. If President Bush made a promise back in 2001, President Trump's got to follow through on that promise today.
Yeah.
Now, he can change the policy, right? He can stop making those promises.
Yes.
But if you don't follow through, and that's for governors, that's for city council members, that's for everybody, right? You don't build half a playground. You don't build half a street. You don't build half a subway. You don't do half a war because on the other end is disaster, and people are going to need help anyway.
Yeah, and you're seeing that disaster play out over there.
Right.
Having done it properly versus not. So you're
and look, what I'm seeing. Speaking of like being pissed off at politicians, what I'm seeing happen is I brought active duty U.S. military service members who happen to be Afghan. They're Afghan Americans. Their families are stuck. I brought them to D.C. to talk to Republicans and Democrats. Democrats don't matter, right? Like nobody gives any care about what a Democrat thinks in Washington right now. The Republicans all care about this, but they're not willing to take action. And I'm not going to name names. I don't know why. They're afraid of Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is the guy that's in charge of this, right? And I know a lot of Americans agree with some of the things that he's doing, but what they need to know and what we need your listeners to do is to call their members of Congress. They can go to afghanevac.org/elected-officials, and you can look up your member of Congress. Let them know that it is so important that we follow through on these promises to our allies, for our veterans, for the frontline civilians, for our kids. I mean, I was in a high school classroom the other day, and I was hearing a young Vietnamese girl talk about how her grandfather was able to immigrate to the United States in 2008 after the Vietnam War, and he was in danger. His entire life was spent in hiding. Yeah. His kids had grown. He had to choose to leave his kids behind and just bring one of his children and his grandchildren. And look, we have an opportunity, if we can restart Enduring Welcome, which may get restarted based on the National Defense Authorization Act. We've been very successful at this. If we can restart that, we have an opportunity to make this generational difference, to continue making a generational difference. And look, these folks are proud Americans. My guy Lucky now has 2 Afghan halal restaurants and 3 Afghan halal grocery stores in Texas and Oklahoma. He's a pillar of the community. He does a lot of interfaith stuff. He's incredible. And Afghan food is delicious. So if you live in a place that has an Afghan restaurant.
And if President Trump wants to bring in 600,000 Chinese students, then we have room for those. And if you want to talk about going back into Bagram,
or Afrikaners.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And so we obviously have the space. We're just selective with it. Democrats chose to bring a certain group of people. Republicans are going to choose to allow a certain group of people. And at the end of the day, this is what I'm talking about with Netflix. If this organization says, well, geez, we could put that $15 a month to use really well by doing sponsoring and bringing over, is that a better use of money for the American culture than Netflix? And I just ask people to start thinking about that. Is the 4 lattes at Starbucks a month and I know you deserve it, you worked hard and blah, 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 but son of a gun, aren't we feeding the same system that's keeping us here where we don't have any money, we don't have any freedom? These politicians are out of control. They're all millionaires. Somehow they're all making, 190,000 and they're all millionaires. Doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. Doesn't matter if they like LGBTQ or the NRA. They're all filthy rich. And yet we're just barely hanging on. Mom's got to work full time. Dad works full time. It's not working. And so you're going to cause massive response from the people. And that's where I say, because I say Jesus Christ is king. And I say that if you like the LGBTQ, that's okay right now. Okay. Because what we can do is talk about our commitment to living for America and what kind of guiding principles we can do. And I think the easiest place to start is that politicians have become rock stars in our world, and they're not. They've become almighty, opposite of the founding. The founders never envisioned somebody like Nancy Pelosi making $500 million and sitting in Capitol Hill and sitting in Washington for 40 years. That was not their intent. I know for a fact that they would be disgusted with the bribes and the corruption and the lying and the deceit. It wasn't based on that. So I am actually, because during the 2024 election, it was, everything was on the line. Is America going to survive or not? And it was all about, if Trump wins, it's going to survive. And if Kamala wins, we're going to hell, and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is giving our trust, faith, hope to these politicians. You're going to hell. You're going to lose no matter what. So American people now have to start. This is a decision where it's not one for all only. It's your community has to matter to you. Those around you in your orbit has to matter to you. And you've got to have something in your heart that gets you up and drives you and moves you. You've got your calling. You've got your passion. You know who you're going to serve. I'm asking the listeners, what is it in your life that you can take that step of saying, you know what, this is a cause worthy, and I'm going to put something towards it, my heart, my treasure, my time. We have to have that kind of movement. This is status quo. This is the boiling water. Okay. We're just sitting in there, just taxes, inflation, work. And at some point, we don't make it out. So we have to respond to this. And it's holding accountable promises made, because there's promises being made to the American people too, just like your Afghan brothers. We're promised this American dream too, and we feel like it's being intentionally derailed. And it's time to stop. I don't know. This is just, you go on and on and on about this stuff, because it's like, can't you see the problem, folks? Let's get activated. Let's get connected. Give us kind of a final, everywhere people can plug in, follow you, help you, all of that material.
Sure. So you can follow me on social media. It's at Shawn J. VanDiver. You can follow Afghan Evac at Afghan Evac everywhere except for Instagram. There it's at Afghan_Evac. And look, go to our website, AfghanEvac.org. We could use your $15 for Netflix. We could use, we are in this season where, I've lost 3 jobs over this. I've never been paid for this work. Our organization subsists on donations, and we have to make this a fully staffed organization.
Yes.
So we could use your support. We're trying to do that early 2026. We need you if you're worried about vetting, go check out AfghanEvac.org/vetting, and you'll see that this is the most vetted population we've ever had in our country's history. And if you're trying to help an Afghan family right now, go to AfghanEvac.org/resources, and you can look at all of the various things that go into this. You can follow us on Substack and get our regular emails at afghanevac.substack.com. And if you want to get up to speed on all of this, you can go to go.afghanevac.org/primer, and that'll bring you up to speed where we're at today. We want your support. Look, I'm a pretty well-connected guy. I interact with a lot of these folks. I see these paid lobbyists. Afghans don't have a paid lobby. Afghans have veterans, faith leaders, some business leaders, and just everyday Americans who are stepping up to help. But there's no like fancy paid lobby. And so we need people power, and that's what your listeners have. So we're really excited to be here with you today, and thank you so much for hearing us out.
Well, I love where your heart's at. It's a heart for others, right? And this is obviously not a grift. There's not a mansion at the end of this or some kind of pot of gold at the end of this movement, but this is to fulfill a promise. And at the end of the day, you could walk away. They're 6,000 miles away. You could walk away and say, they're never going to find me. Never going to. But your heart won't let you do that. Your conscience won't let you do that. You won't let you say, gosh, that guy laid it down for me, and we're walking away. I mean, it's a breathtaking scenario. So I appreciate where your heart is at. I love the fact that they're not forgotten, even though you're living in San Diego. You could go off, and it's a beautiful place. And no, your heart still remains with those that even got you back home, and those that supported your brothers and sisters. So we want to thank you. We'll get everything up in the show notes, continue to support you and follow up with this. And folks, do this until next time. Serve God, help others, stay good. Goodbye. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.